Aloha, everyone. Welcome to episode 2 of Alaka'i, the podcast. We are your hosts, Michael,
Valerie,
and Pim. Okay, we hope you listened to the last podcast episode because we talked about hiking and running, and I hope that you shared it to your friends. And today we have an incredible guest for today's episode.
Yes, and it's Elder Taniguchi. Elder Stacy Taniguchi is a distinguished retired professor from Brigham Young University's Marriott School of Business, where he earned his PhD with a specialization in educational leadership and foundations. Beyond the classroom, Elder Taniguchi is a seasoned mountaineer and an international expedition leader with an awe-inspiring resume of summiting some of the world's most iconic peaks, including Denali, Aconcagua, Kilimanjaro, Elbrus, Vinson, and Everest.
With over 25 years of guiding experience in Alaska, the last frontier, he has mastered the art of the wilderness adventures, leading remote hiking expeditions, sea kayaking journeys, and fly fishing float trips through untamed rivers. His expertise spans far beyond Alaska, with guiding escapades across Hawaii, South America, East Africa, southern Russia, Nepal, China, Europe, Australia, New Zealand, and the South Pacific.
In addition to his outdoor pursuit, Elder Taniguchi co-founded Build Up Experiences, a business leadership and family legacy consulting firm, alongside fellow BYU professors. His passion for adventure and dedication to shaping meaningful experiences continue to inspire those who seek to push boundaries and explore new horizons. And he is also known for the 100 list, which we'll talk more on today.
Okay, Elder Taniguchi, welcome to the podcast. How are you feeling?
Good right now, and thank you for having me.
Okay, we're so glad to have you here. Firstly, can you tell us a bit about the 100 list and what was your purpose of creating it for yourself?
Well, I was born on Molokai. My family lived basically working for a very influential family in Hawaii, the Cooks. And they owned a ranch called the Molokai Ranch and Dairy Farm. And my father was the foreman of that ranch. And probably would still end up living there, picking pineapples, I guess, fishing, doing whatever else Molokai people do. And but our family, one of the things that my parents emphasized was they wanted us to learn how to read really well. So they would have different kinds of books and magazines that they subscribed to. One of them was a magazine that is no longer published, and I think your young audience probably may have never heard of it before. It's called Life Magazine. Unless you've seen the movie called The Secret Life of Walter Mitty, because the backdrop to that movie was the Life magazine publication offices in New York City. But it was a weekly pictorial magazine, and every week we'd get the magazine and I'd be excited to look at it because it was just pictures and articles about things around the world. And always on the inside back cover of the magazine was supposedly what they called the picture of the week. And there was a picture of a man holding up a sheet of paper that had an itemized list of things on it, and it said that he had accomplished his list. So that attracted my attention, and I started reading it. And it was about a man who, when he was younger, decided he was going to create the list of the things he wanted to do in his lifetime, and it was kind of his guide to his life. And I don't know how many things he had on the list, and I don't even remember what he might have had on the list, but I just thought that was a great idea, just to create a list of the things that you're thinking you might want to do. And I know people in the audience are probably thinking, oh, well, he's talking about a bucket list, but I'll explain later why it's not really a bucket list. So I started creating a list of just the things that I want to accomplish in my life, places I wanted to go, things I wanted to do. And over about 10 years, the list grew to be 100 things. So it wasn't an overnight list, but it took a while. But that 100 items have really become the roadmap to the way I would live my life, at least up until this point.
Wow. Okay. You've climbed some of the highest peaks and faced life-threatening situations while doing the 100 list. What have those experiences taught you about the moments of stillness and quiet in life? Is your life right now as busy as 30 years ago?
I think it is, just because this mission has been a lot more than I was expecting. But to answer your question, yes, it has. In fact, my conversion story is about climbing a mountain. And my testimony of prayer, my testimony of the existence of Heavenly Father and our Savior, my commitment to the gospel principles were literally born in the mountains.
Okay, love that. We have another question here. It says, are there any items on your 100 list that remain unfinished, not because of time constraints, but because they've evolved in meaning?
Well, one of the things about the list that I tell people is that you need to be very thoughtful about what you put on there, because one of the rules that I tell people about my list is once you put something on the list, you cannot take it off. Because I have found that if it's important to you enough to put it on your list when you're 20 years old, I guarantee you 50 years from now, it will still be something that you dream about doing even if you haven't accomplished it yet. But to answer your question is I have completed the 100 things. But that doesn't prevent me from adding some other things. So one of the things that my wife and I added to the list together was to serve a senior couple mission, which we're doing now. So when we're done with this mission,
We'll
we
add
can check
another
that off.
Yeah. Okay, because when I was reading a bunch of articles about you provided by BYU Provo, the number one thing that I thought was it was already like 100, but you said a while ago that as you move on, as you grow old, you start adding more or like accomplishing more, and then you add more and stuff. And so I thought that it was immediately 100 things or 100 goals at once on paper. So that's really interesting to know that it's not, and it takes a while for you to like add more.
And the other thing to remember too is when I teach this idea to people, the number of things you put on the list doesn't matter. What matters is you start with one. So I had 100 things on my list, and it might continue to grow. But if you only have 10 things, that's fine. If you have 1,000 things, that's fine too. The thing to remember, though, is be thoughtful about it and make sure that you won't be able to take it off if you're trying to accomplish everything on the list. But it's not really a list for checking things off. It's really a list to understand the opportunities that you have in your life. I think it's really important for people to understand that Heavenly Father has not sent us here to just kind of, what I say, endure. That's not the purpose of life. You have a lot more opportunities, I think, than you even imagine. But you have to know what to look for and recognize it when it comes. And many times, I think, if you don't really have thought through that a little bit, or like I'm suggesting, you write them down, you have a tendency to make excuses more than you have reasons to why you should take advantage of the opportunity. How many times have you had someone suggest to you, like, oh, let's go do this thing? And you're thinking like, oh, that'd be cool, but you know what? I can't do it. I don't have the time. Or maybe I don't have the money. Or I don't have anybody to do it with that you want to do it with or something. We have a tendency to make excuses why we can't do it rather than, wait a minute, that's on my list. And this opportunity may never come again. So I should take advantage of it now. Find a way to make it happen. I think that's what the list does.
Was there a goal that you wrote down, and was there like a goal that scared you, but you really wanted to do it, but kind of like scare you, and how do you do with that feeling?
Yeah, getting married was a really scary one.
Oh, I think it scares all of us.
Yeah, because I didn't get married until later in life. I think I was 27, 28 years old. Because you just, you look at some of your friends and they got married when they were younger and they're struggling, and some of them get a divorce, and you're thinking like, that's horrible. I don't want to do that. So when the opportunity came to marry my wife, I mean, I knew I wanted to, but, there's some hesitation, is she the right one? Is this going to work or whatever? So, yeah, that was probably the most scariest one.
Did you even write it down, Elder Taniguchi?
Yeah, no, it was on the list of 100 to eventually get married because, that's something that I think was my parents did it, obviously. I've had cousins and friends getting married, and it looked interesting, and and a lot of couples obviously do very well, and you can tell that they need each other. So I kind of thought, yeah, I'm probably going to be in that boat too. But I took my time.
Taking your time, yeah. Another question is, what questions do you ask yourself when evaluating whether a goal aligns with your core values? Because I know that you talked about creating the list, ticking off the ones that you've already done, adding more. So what's usually like the state of your mind when you're creating these goals? What do you think about when you're creating them?
Well, I teach people that even before you start thinking about what you put on this list, you have to know what we call your core values. They're very, very important. And it surprises me how many people have never sat down and thought about what are my core values? What are the things that are so important to me that they're pretty much non-negotiable for me? And I had a very good friend, a man by the name of Hiram Smith, but I'm not that old. So he's a descendant of the original Hiram Smith that we're obviously very familiar with in the church history. But he was a motivational speaker. He was the founder of a company called Franklin Quest that many of your audience members may not know of, but they may have heard about it because it merged with a company by Stephen Covey and it became known as Franklin Covey. So he was the Franklin portion of the Franklin Covey company. He told me that he says, in order to live a life to thrive, you have to know what is most important to you. Otherwise, you're like a ship without a rudder. And when the seas get stormy and the winds blow and the currents start pushing the boat around, you don't have core values, you don't have a rudder. So the boat is going to go not necessarily where you want it to go, but it will go according to the winds and tides of the time. And I think he's absolutely right, especially with young people today. If they do not know what their core values are, they will make choices not based upon what they really feel is important, but what people around them are telling them that they should do or go, those kinds of things. So before you even start creating this list, I think it's important for your audience members to know you have to ask yourself, what are so important to me that I'm willing to risk it all and not negotiate with anybody about that? And so typically in the presentations that I give a metaphor that ends up being like a tool to help you identify what those core values are, but you definitely have to take the time to identify those things. Otherwise, you're living your life really based upon circumstances.
Okay. And with that one, an additional question is, how do you distinguish between calculated risks worth taking and reckless pursuits in life and on your list? Because I feel like you did say that if you don't have core values, obviously you won't do anything that's a lot meaningful to you when you write down the list. So, and sometimes it's just, oh, I'm gonna take this risk. Like an example would be skydiving, and maybe it doesn't really resonate with you, but you still do anyway. And so how do you differentiate between reckless pursuits and calculated risks?
Well, another rule to creating your list is that whatever you put on the list cannot be in conflict with your core values. Otherwise, that item is not going to help you thrive. Mm-hmm. So one of the things that you might be, if your core value is to live, an honest life, then that means that whatever you're thinking about doing, you got to be honest with yourself. And in many cases, there are times where I won't put something down because if I'm going to be honest with myself, I'm not sure if that's really what I want to do or that's what a lot of other people say, you should do or would be a cool thing to do. Another thing is I also realize that some of the things that I have on my list were high risk kinds of activities or pursuits. But knowing that, I also realize that that means I need to be prepared to participate in that. So you're not going to, for example, decide I'm going to go climb the highest mountain in the world and not train for it, not practice with it, maybe definitely climb other peaks that are high and tall before you pursue Everest. And to me, that's foolish. But what's interesting is many times as you are trying to accomplish something on your list, there are other things that come and open doors for you that you didn't know were actually going to happen. So, for example, in my pursuit to climb the highest peak on each continent, you get to meet people that you would not have met. And those people have literally become friends and network connections that have given you other opportunities to do other things that would not have happened. So one of the things that I see in the benefit of pursuing your list items is that that list item may be what you think you're going for, but then in the end you realize that it was much more than that. If you have time, I'll give you a quick example. So in climbing Everest, when you're done and you're coming down, there's a section of the mountain called the Khumbu Icefall. It is the most dangerous part of climbing the mountain, but it's on the very bottom, probably third of the mountain. It's the place where the Khumbu Glacier that starts at the base of Everest is spilling over a 2,000-foot cliff. So the ice of the glacier just jumbles up into these huge blocks of ice, and they're falling over, and it's just a scary place because you just hear all the movement. So you try to get out of there as quickly as possible. Well, the item on the list was to climb Everest, which unfortunately we didn't actually accomplish. We got close, but we didn't make it. But so we're coming down. We had been gone from home for about 2 months, so it's been a long expedition. And you start getting antsy to get through this dangerous section, and you want to go home. And unfortunately, I made a mistake and fell down in the ice fall and dislocated my knee. So now I'm stuck in this dangerous place with these big ice blocks falling around me and making all these creaky sounds. And it's not a safe place for my team to stick around trying to help me to get out, because the longer you stay in there, you increase the chances of getting crushed by some of these blocks. So the decision was made that the rest of the team, except for the team leader who stayed with me, they need to leave. Well, after what should have taken just maybe another hour and a half to get out of the ice fall, 4 hours later, I'm still in the ice fall crawling because my knee is dislocated and I can't stand up on it. And I'm really thinking, this is it. This is where I'm going to die because I'm in here way too long. And then as I was coming over one of the rises, I see these people coming into the ice fall, and it's late in the day, so there should be nobody coming into the ice fall at this point. But then I realized these are the Sherpas that have been climbing the mountain with us for the last 2 months, and they're all coming back. And I find out they all came back to get me. And I'm realizing, like, wow. Because just so you understand what kind of danger this would be like you deciding I'm going back into a burning building to get something that I really value. They're risking their lives, and they're risking it for me. That was such an eye-opening emotional experience for me to realize that people thought of me in a way that they were willing to risk their lives to do that. I had no expectation that when I said I want to climb Everest on my list, that I would recognize that. That's what I think is the power of creating the list to thrive.
I just want to go back to what you said, Elder Taniguchi, earlier. How would you define, I know that you kind of like defined core values as something that is non-negotiable to you. But how would you kind of like exactly define it in such a way? Because for me, I see it in a way where core values is kind of like tied within the gospel. Is that what you mean?
It can be. I mean, obviously. So the metaphor that I give, and I obviously for your audience, you're not going to see the picture, but I use the metaphor where glaciers are these huge rivers of ice, and it's a solid piece of ice that moves because it's a fluid. And these things can be like 3,000 plus feet thick because it's just over the many, many centuries, the snow accumulates on top of each other and creates this huge ice pack. So as it's moving, because it's solid, the bottom part of the glacier moves slower than the top of the glacier because the bottom has to move over the rocks and everything that's underneath. So because of the difference in speed, the ice cracks and they create these huge gaps that they call crevasses. And when you're traveling on the glacier, you come to these cracks every once in a while. You got to figure out a way to get across them. Obviously, the best way to get across them is find a place where the crack is narrow and you can step over or jump across safely. But that's not always possible. One thing that we try to do in preparation of some of the bigger cracks is we bring aluminum ladders. And then if we have enough of them, we'll tie them together, lash them together, and then make it span the crack. So imagine that you've got this ladder, like let's say 3 ladders tied together to span this big 30-foot gaping hole in the ice. And the crack is 3,000 feet thick. So it's dropping 3,000 feet. And now you're going to step on the ladders to go across to the other side, knowing that if your foot slips off the rung of the ladder or you miss the rung and you go between the ladders or you just tip over, you're going to fall 3,000 feet to your death. So if you have that in your head, now think of this. I'm your guide on your mountain to climb of life. And I brought these ladders. We've got this crevasse. I tie them really good together, put it across. It barely fits, but it gets to the other side. Now I do this all the time. So I run across the ladder, and now I'm convincing you to come across. And you're looking at this whole situation. It's 30 feet from where you are to where I'm at, and a 3,000-foot drop below the ladders. And there's nothing between you and the ladders in the bottom. Are you going to just come across now? You're hesitating.
Yeah.
Okay, let me try to get you to think about this a little differently. I'm going to offer you $10. If you come across, I give you $10. Would you come across now?
If it's 100, yes.
Oh, okay. A lot of times when I show the picture of what this looks like, so there's a visual, most people are going to say, no way, no how am I doing that? Because one mistake ends it all. Whatever's on the other side is not worth it to me to cross. And most people won't do it for $10. That's not enough. For you, $100. You're a student, so I can see $100 could go a long way. But when I talk to executives or people that obviously have a lot of money, they won't even do it for $100. They won't even do it for $1,000. It's not worth it. So I changed the scenario a little bit. Now I want you to think of somebody that you care for very deeply, somebody that you love, a family member, maybe a brother, sister, cousin, niece, nephew, somebody that's really young too. Let's say like between 5 to 10 years old. You thinking of somebody like that?
Yeah.
All right. Now let's say for whatever reason you decided to bring that person on your expedition of life. And we've come to this crevasse. Now, I'm not going to necessarily ask that person to cross it themselves. Okay? In fact, who are you thinking of?
My niece,
Okay. What's her name?
Iana.
Yana. Okay. So I take Yana and I put her in my backpack, put it on my back, and I walk across the ladders. So now your niece and I are on the other side, and now I'm trying to get you to cross. But you're not doing it for anything. You're still hesitating. You're looking down in the hole. you're scared. This is like, oh man, this is ridiculous. But then before you start to come across, I noticed that the ladder on my side is starting to melt through the snow and it might fall into the crevasse, which is not a good situation for you to come across. So I tell you to wait. I'm fixing this, but I have to take the backpack off, and your niece, who was in the backpack, crawls out. And she starts running around on the glacier on that side. But I'm paying attention to this ladder because I need you to come across. And now the wind starts to blow, and it starts to snow. And you're screaming at me, and you're saying, Elder, Elder, please pay attention to my niece. But I can't hear you. And all of a sudden, you see your niece starting to come close to the edge of the crevasse because she sees you on the other side, and she wants to go to you. And no matter what you're trying to do to try to get my attention, I can't hear you. I'm too concentrating on getting that ladder secured. And you realize that unless you go across the ladder to save your niece, she's going to fall in the crevasse. And she's going to die. Now I'll ask you, would you come across the ladders now?
Yes.
Yeah. Would you hesitate?
No.
Then I think you just identified one of your core values. That's what I mean.
Wow.
You wouldn't do it for money. Or, well, yes, you would. You do it for $100. But a lot of people who think money is so important to them realize that money is not one of their core values. But somebody that they care for very much is definitely a core value. So I tell people, when it's time for you to identify your core value, use the metaphor and ask yourself, what am I willing to cross those ladders for? Then I think you're starting to identify your core values.
Wow. Thank you for that, Elder Taniguchi. I think the English class metaphors are like getting to me now. Okay. So, for our next question, how do you balance the individual focus required for personal accomplishments with the collective experiences of guiding and teaching others? You kind of like explained earlier the process of kind of like others helping you, and then how is it for you now? Like what are the things, or what are the things that helps you balance that individual focus for that personal accomplishments to help you help others as well?
Well, I've been a teacher all my life, adult life. And what I have come to realize, you know how as young people you probably still might be wondering, what is my purpose here on this earth? Why am I here?
Yes.
Every day, I guess.
Yeah, and when I was your age, I had the same question. Now, as I'm older and ready to close the book on my chapter, I'm realizing that my purpose was to be a teacher and to have the experiences to be able to tell my students, you know what, I've been there, done that, and this is what I've learned. So I think for me, a lot of it has been one in which my purpose has been to tell as many people as I can that this is what I've learned through my journey of life. And if you find anything that resonates with you from what I've had in my life, then I'm hoping that it helps to guide you a little better. So, for example, this discussion we're having about core values is all part of my research that I did in BYU Provo about choose to thrive. We live in a world, where there are so many things that sometimes are just out of our control. The pandemic, for example. So many people's lives just turned upside down when the pandemic occurred. And I was so shocked to see how many people really lost hope in life, which is really sad. Because as I said before, Heavenly Father keeps putting opportunities in front of us, but we have to be in a place where we hopefully can recognize them. My teachings of Choose to Thrive hopefully opens people's eyes to the fact that yes, my life is full of opportunities. Even when the world goes upside down with a pandemic and my plans are changing and getting disrupted, there's still another avenue that the Lord provides. And you just need to change your direction. And choosing to thrive and having a list, I think, can really help you always see that those opportunities are there.
Is the C2T, is that choose to
That's
thrive?
just the abbreviation that our
I-
consulting
is
company
is that like an initiative or like a program that you created?
It's a program that we developed. It starts with the Choose to Thrive presentation, and I've explained some of it to you. And then sometimes I think the presentation creates more questions than it does create answers. So we always have people wanting to know, well, you said about this, how can I do this? How many things should I have on my list and whatever. So we follow it up with workshops to help people. And the way we do workshops is we don't do it in a classroom. We do it in the outdoors. So we create these experiences where we'll take people hiking, we'll take people rock climbing, we'll take people whitewater rafting, mountain biking, sea kayaking, dog sled riding, skiing, and then we incorporate the lessons within the experiences.
Wow, that's nice. Hopefully we'll get to have it here, Elder Taniguchi. So, if your 100 list could include intangible contributions to others' lives, what would those items be?
I think hope, for sure. That people realize to always have hope.
Why?
Just because that's your impetus to keep moving forward and learning more and looking again for more opportunities, right? And I think that's really tied to the gospel. The whole purpose of the gospel is to give people hope, especially people who are suffering, people who have probably not lived the life that they feel like they should have, and they think all is lost now. If you have hope in the Savior and what He's promised, then that gives you something to strive for, that you can keep moving on and finding your purpose and finding your relationship with God. It's all about the idea that no matter what you've done, no matter where you've been, no matter how dark it seems, Christ is the light. He's the hope.
I agree. Like, this has been so powerful, and I learned so many things. Like, right now, I feel inspired to go back home and have my husband sit on a table and let's make the list. But I'm really sad that I have to go because I have a test right now, and the professor doesn't allow makeup test.
It's okay.
But you guys keep talking. I will listen to the podcast and see what you guys talk about.
Good
Thank
luck.
you.
Okay, so my next question is like, how do you encourage younger generations to create goals that balance ambition with sustainable living and mindfulness? Because I feel like, as a college students, we don't get to like have a lot of what do you call that? Maybe resources to do a lot of stuff and a lot of stuff that we actually want to do, like for example, like skydiving. It's actually like $200. I searched it. It's $200, and I want to like do it as well, but when I looked at it, it's like $200.
There's also preparation that goes into it, I think.
Yeah.
Before you like skydive, I think they train you. I don't know what they do, but yeah, it does take a lot of money and time, and we kind of don't have that as much.
Yeah. So how do you what's your advice regarding for us younger generations on how to make those ambitions or creating goals that balance ambition with sustainable living?
Patience.
Patience.
Because it may not be the time now, but maybe in the near future, the time will be appropriate and you'll recognize it. I'll give you an example. One of the things on my list is I always wanted to learn how to fly and kind of be like a bird, and get that opportunity. But I'm sure you realize that learning how to fly an airplane is not cheap. That takes a lot of time and a lot of money. So one day, my friend and I we had gone skiing, and we were coming home from skiing, and then we passed by this little small airport, and there was a sign that said, "Go hang gliding for $25." Okay, well, I had $25, and I thought, hey, that might be close enough to learn how to fly. So I told my friend, let's go to the airport and let's see what this is all about. And so we went in there and found out that I guess these people were going to, they tie you on to them, and they go running off a cliff with a hang glider, and they take you hang gliding. And they were having a sale. So even though the sign said $25, they were doing it for only $10 because they weren't getting enough people. So that day they were going to do it for $10. And I said, well, I'll definitely do that. And so I did. And it was like, wow, I'm flying. And I actually, from there, I said, what would it take for me to learn to just do it on my own? And so they said, well, we offer some lessons, and it was like 4 lessons. So that didn't seem like very much. And then I could just go do it on my own. But that just kind of came out of the blue. But the point being is that it was on my list, and I recognized that it was on my list. And when I saw that opportunity, instead of making an excuse like, oh, we got to go home, or I really shouldn't spend $25 on that or whatever, I said, you know what, I got to take advantage of this because it may never happen again. So it was just patience. It didn't, I want to learn to fly, but I'm willing to wait for the right opportunity. And that's, and that learning how to fly then led me to eventually learn how to fly gliders, and then learn how to fly an airplane. And then, because you start learning all these things, and it gets you more interested, and then you get connected to the right people who can teach you how to fly that you didn't know before. And like I said, it opens doors. Opportunities are so abundant that we have no idea.
As you continue to inspire others, has your purpose for creating and completing the 100 list changed over time?
No, it hasn't. It was always because it would be the roadmap to what I would do in my life. And even though some of the things that I had originally put on that list seemed like, oh, that is never going to happen, but I hope the opportunity come, it happens. And you'd be surprised that the Lord will provide ways. If you've done it for the right reasons, they're based on your core values. And they don't have to be like crazy, so like out of your head kind of an idea. They I think that you put things on your list like I think some of us have already done. Graduate from high school. When you're a teenager, that might be a goal. Getting a university degree, okay, that's getting pretty close, right? Getting married or something like that. But then sometimes they can get really crazy. I had one person who wrote me a letter one time, and he said, oh, Stacy, when I listened to your Choose to Thrive, I thought, you know what? He said to put things on there that you really feel like you wanted to do. Be honest with yourself. That's part of my core values. So he said, I went out on the limb, really stretched it out, and I said, I want to be able to go into space. And he says, I don't know why I put it on the list, but I put it on the list because I just thought that is something that I think I would like to do. But did I think I would ever have the chance? No, probably not. And then he said 1 month later, he finds out that there are people like Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos that are building these rocket ships that obviously you need a lot of money right now. You can buy a seat on the rocket ship that will take you up into space only for probably, 10 minutes, and then you come back. And he says, you know what? I probably can't afford to do that, but maybe in the near future, the price will come down and I might be able to check it off before I die. And I said, yeah, good for you. Because you know what? You never know. You never know.
If you had to pick one moment that best encapsulates the essence of your life philosophy, what would it be and why?
I definitely think it's having my family. My family is everything to me. It's, I would definitely cross the ladders for them. They are very, very high priority. They are everything that you look back on, and they are my legacy. I'm old. I'm not going to be here for much longer. So there's going to be a time when I'm gone, and most people won't even know I existed. But I know that whatever I am and whatever I've done, if it's going to carry on, it's going to carry on through my kids, my grandkids, and hopefully further on. So yeah, that's been huge for me.
I have one last question before we wrap things up. Um, you're doing all of these great things. You've completed your list. You've gotten married. You're serving right now. How do your kids feel about it? Like, now that they're older and they have their own families, or do they have their own families, all of them? Yeah. So how do they feel about growing up having a dad that's active and he's doing all these type of things? Did you teach them? Did they also join the list with you? Do they have their own lists? How is everything?
I do know that they've all tried to create their lists, and I don't know where they are on it, but I know that, and here's an example where one day, well, just a little bit of a background. My oldest son, every summer after we finished teaching school and going to school, my first summer job was to guide on Denali. So we'd pack everything up, throw it in the vehicle, and my whole family would drive with me to the town where we're going to fly into the mountains. And we did that every year. And my son would always say, I want to go with Dad. I want to go with Dad. And my wife would go, no, you're not going to go do something stupid like that. People die. Which was kind of funny because when he was a junior in high school, she had this idea that for a family home evening, our kids were doing well in school, and she felt like she wanted to keep encouraging them to be successful. She said, let's go ahead and tell them that if they finish high school and are successful, that we will support them in living a dream that they have, as long as it's not too expensive and crazy. And yeah, that's their reward. And I thought, that's a great idea. So family home evening comes, and my wife explains to them this plan, and then we ask each of the kids, what do they want to do? So our son, the oldest son, we ask him first. Guess what he says?
Denali?
He wants to climb Denali with Dad. And my wife looks at him and looks at me and goes, oh my gosh, what did I do? And I told her, I said, hey, this was your idea, and this is what he wants to do. So she told me, she said, well, if this is going to happen, he needs to train with you. He needs to get ready. And then when he goes, you can't be guiding other people. I want you totally focused on him. So when he was a senior, graduated from high school, we went to climb Denali. Wow. And so that was a chance for me to share with him. And we've done that with all of our other children. They didn't all want to climb Denali, but they wanted to travel, or they wanted to go do this, and we try to support them with it. And then these things were things on their list. So for our kids, hopefully they have their list and they're living it and sticking to their core values, and they're all successful. So I'm really hoping that it's benefited them.
Yeah. Thank you for spending time with us, Elder Taniguchi. We truly appreciate your selflessness and values regarding all of the things that you've shared with us, and you truly inspired us to create our own list as well. It may not be 100, but it'll be a list.
It'll get there.
Remember, the number of things on the list doesn't matter, but it has to start with one. And it's something that I think even your audience members, you could do that tonight. You can do that tonight.
Okay. We'll keep that in mind, Elder Taniguchi.
Yes, thank you for helping us understand the 100 list. And thank you, listeners, for tuning in. Don't forget to follow us on our socials at Alaka'i News on Instagram and Alaka'i on Facebook and YouTube.
And make sure to tune in to this week's episode and next week's on Buzzsprout, YouTube, and Spotify. These are your hosts, Valerie,
Michael.
See you next week, guys.